Hi, it's Ken Whitehouse here from Hart, Honda Australia Rider Training. Today we're going to have a look at how we respond to hazards or risks when we're riding in the traffic. In our last video, we looked at the importance of having a really good observation technique. We learned that we need to be able to see at least 5 seconds ahead of us, and then we scan all the way back to our scooter. We're scanning out to the sides, looking for hazards there, and then we're looking behind us by using both of our mirrors. Anytime we change lanes or positions, we also need to do a head check in the direction that we're going to move. To be a low-risk scooterist, which is what we want to be, we need to use some of our friends. Two of our best friends are time and space. If we have enough time, we can basically respond to any situation that arises. We get that time by looking well ahead of us. One of the worst things that can happen to us as a scooterist is that we have a problem when it's right at our front wheel. Then we've got no time to respond. So that good observation technique makes us a lower risk rider. So let's think about space. We get space by creating a buffer zone between us and any potential risk or hazard. The more space we have between us and a risk, that gives us more time to respond. Let's have a look at how else we can lower our risk in the traffic. As human beings, we all need time to recognise when things are happening around us. This is called our reaction time. An average reaction time for a human being is around about 1.5 seconds. Let's relate that to our riding. If I'm riding down the road at 60 kilometres an hour, in 1.5 seconds, I travel 25 metres. Now that's where scooterists often get themselves into trouble. Let's have a look how we can minimise that reaction time. So how do we minimise our reaction time? We do this by setting up our brakes. Remember, setting up the brakes is taking out the free play in both the front and the rear brake levers. That way I can brake from a moment's notice. The general rule to setting up is, if anything can brake, accelerate or turn into my crash avoidance space, the space that's clear in front of me, I can then respond as quickly as possible. Let's have a look at this in a real situation. There's a car at the intersection. I'm going to be riding by. Whether that car pulls into the traffic before I get there or after I've ridden past, I have no control over that situation. If I ride past and I do nothing, I am relying on that driver to not make a mistake. The only reason I'm not having a crash is the driver hasn't pulled out. I'm taking the risk. Let's have a look at what I can do to minimise the risk and minimise my reaction time. As I'm riding down, I'm looking at least 5 seconds ahead. I can see the car there and I realise there is the potential that he could pull out. If I buffer away from the car, so I've moved my scooter into the right-hand wheel track of the lane, that makes a little bit more space between me and the vehicle, and I also set up my brakes. As I'm riding past, if the car moves at all, I'm already in a position to squeeze and come to a stop. If the car doesn't move, once I'm past the danger zone, I release the setup and carry on. It hasn't cost me anything, but I didn't take the risk. So as I'm riding, I'm using my observation technique to scan for any hazards. I can see a vehicle at the intersection coming up. He might pull out on me, so I'm going to buffer to the right side of the lane and I'm going to set up my brakes as I go by, keeping them set up until the danger is passed. Now I release and continue on. So once again, I'm riding along using my observation technique to scan for any risks. I can see a vehicle coming up at this intersection up here. He might pull out on me, so I'm going to buffer away to the left, setting up my brakes as I go by, danger passed, release the setup and continue on. And I'm riding along, and once again, I'm using my observation technique to scan for any hazards. I can see this vehicle up at the intersection. He looks like he might pull out on me, so I'm going to set up my brakes. Oh man! Yeah, good one, buddy. Off you go. What a corkhead. So let's recap on what we looked at there. To minimise our risks in traffic, we need to use time and we need to use space. We need to minimise our reaction time. We minimise the reaction time by using our setup and by creating a buffer zone away from potential hazards. Use these techniques and your risk level will go down. If you want any more tips about riding, come and see us at Hart. Safe riding.